Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. This is the show that educates you, empowers you, and inspires you to live your most fearlessly authentic life. Because, in my humble opinion, if we're not doing that every single day, what the heck are we doing here? I'm your host, Jodi Harrison Bauer, and I'm here to help you break through barriers, live boldly, and step into the strongest, most confident version of yourself. Together, we'll dive into health, fitness, mindset, aging, confidence, relationships, and so much more. If you love the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so we can spread the love to everyone who needs to hear this message. Today, I want to take a step back and reintroduce myself. After 5 years of hosting this podcast, I know there are so many new listeners, new followers, and new audience members who may not know my full story, who I am, what I stand for, and why I'm so passionate about helping women step into their confidence through health and fitness. So, in this episode, I'm sharing my journey, how I got here, what drives me, and how I'm helping women just like you become the strongest and most empowered versions of themselves. Whether you've been here since the beginning or are just joining me now, this is the perfect time to get to know me and what Fearlessly Authentic is all about. I thought it would be a great time to reintroduce myself because I have stepped into a new time in my life. When I started Fearlessly Authentic in February of 2020, it was before the pandemic and it was before we all went into lockdown. My first show aired in May of 2020. So we were already in lockdown. My studio was closed, didn't know what was going on in the world, and there was a lot of uncertainty. And the reason I started the show was because of an event that brought me global attention. But let's go back to the beginning because I tell the best stories when I can tell them in chronological order rather than being all over the place. So I was born in 1960. No, I'm only kidding. We're going to start where I began to take charge of my own life. And that whole story began after I got divorced at 42. I am the mother of two amazing young women, 32 and almost 36. And I am lucky enough to really call them my best friends. And that's not to say that we haven't had a perfect relationship because no relationship is perfect. But I would pick my daughters as my friends. I was not that mom that loved the whole baby stage. I couldn't wait until they could walk and talk. And I'm just so grateful for all the work that I put in to cultivating a relationship with them, raising them with morals, with integrity, with empathy, sensitivity, hard work, love. That I look at them now and I truly can't believe that I created these human beings. Yes, they had help from their dad too, for sure. But I really do look at them as my best friend. And I'm just so grateful for the relationship. And again, that doesn't mean that they drive me crazy. They do at times because as moms, for those of you who are listening who are moms, as a mom, our job never ends. It just changes. It pivots throughout life. And that's what life is all about, is about the pivots. And I never really knew that. I was sort of like on autopilot. You know, when I was a little girl, I started dancing at the age of 2, and then I danced until I was 13 or 14. And then I got involved in cheerleading, and I cheered all through high school, junior high and high school. And then I went off to a women's college, and I chose to go to a women's college at the time. This is a funny story because my boyfriend at the time, and moms and girls listening right now, do not follow your boyfriend to school. Now, there was no way I was going to follow my boyfriend to college because he went to an Ivy League school and I did not have Ivy League grades. I was a solid B plus student. He was a scholar athlete, so he was, recruited by all the Ivy League schools. The men in his family went to Dartmouth because it used to be an all male school, and the women went to Mount Holyoke. Well, I didn't want to go to Mount Holyoke, which is all women, but I decided to look at other women's colleges because I thought, well, I want to look good in his eyes. I know this is so, so silly, but this is 1979. And I'm not saying that as an excuse at all. I ended up going to Simmons College, which is now Simmons University in Boston, and I'm really happy that I went there, even though every single year I thought I wanted to leave and go to another school because I thought I could be having more fun at another school. I was going to transfer to Michigan and then got scared. And because my parents really couldn't afford to fly me back and forth, I knew I was going to be stuck in Michigan during the winters and blah, blah, blah. It just wasn't going to work out. And my parents were going through some other issues. And I really didn't, as the firstborn of three girls, I prided myself in trying to keep everything steady in the house. I have two younger sisters, and we're all very, very different. But I was, as most of you who can relate, who are firstborns, we were born to please. We are born, and I think it's an innate thing where we feel that we need to succeed in everything that we do. We do appreciate validation. And sometimes, depending on who our parents are, we don't necessarily get that validation from them and therefore end up seeking out validation in other ways. So for me, because I did not receive a lot of validation from my parents, the validation I received was, "You're pretty, Jodi." It wasn't, "You're really smart." It was nothing like that. "You're pretty, you're a pretty cheerleader, you're a pretty dancer." And in high school, I didn't really have to work very hard. I was that annoying girl that always had a boyfriend. As I mentioned, my boyfriend, he was a captain of three sports. So I was that annoying girl that was always with my boyfriend. I did have some very, very close girlfriends, so I wasn't that girl that didn't have girlfriends. But I wish that I had parents that were like, "Jodi, your boyfriend's really important, but you do need to make sure that you prioritize your friendships." And I didn't really have that from my mom because she sort of grew up, she was very pretty, also the oldest, but she had two younger brothers. And most of her life was all about that you're pretty. And in that generation, education really wasn't a priority. So it was really my generation was the first generation that put any types of priorities on education altogether. I grew up in Connecticut. My father graduated from UConn, University of Connecticut. He went to college on like an ROTC. So he was ROTC, which means that he went to college. He grew up very poor. His college was paid for by the armed services, like the Army. So it was the Air Force for him. And so then he had to serve in the Air Force. So he served in the Korean War, and he taught me how to count to 10 in Japanese, and how to say thank you, arigato, and I'll just help you. I'll just show you right now. I'll count to 10, ichi, ni, san, chi, go, roku, chi, chi, hachi, kuchu. Yeah, so I heard a lot of stories about that, but it's crazy to think that my father was in the Korean War. He was an accountant or something like that. He wasn't like, didn't have a gun. So the oldest of three girls, my sister's 2 years younger, and my other little sister's 5 years younger. And I always felt a responsibility to take care of them, to make sure that they behaved well and did all that other good stuff. And so I wanted validation. I got validation through my grades. I got validation from my boyfriend. I got validation from the other cheerleaders. I was captain of the cheerleading squad when I was a junior, and it's another story about my senior year. We won't get into that right now. So I received plenty of validation, so I wasn't seeking it elsewhere. And so I decided to go to this women's college and road crew for a little while because at a women's college, we did not have cheerleaders, and gave up. I don't usually give up on things. Again, I feel like I always had this hand behind me, pushing me, pushing me, pushing me. And I used to blame it on my mom that it was her pushing me to do well. And maybe it was. And I think I'll be completely transparent. I believe that my mom lived vicariously through my life, and it was okay for a while, but I was aware of it, and I didn't really let it bother me, until it did bother me. So, get to college, I'm not dancing, I'm not cheering, who am I? I'm with all of these women. Why did I choose to go to a women's college? And then my boyfriend breaks up with me second semester freshman year. Of course, this is why you don't follow a boy to school or close by. But I went up to Dartmouth a couple of times and had a fun time. And on the bus going to White River Junction, Vermont from Boston, I met a very good friend of mine who was also dating a boy from Dartmouth, and they both broke up with us because they were rushing for fraternities. And at a women's college, you don't have sororities. So I quickly recognized that there were a lot of women there that were way prettier than me and way smarter than me. And I had to up my game. I had to figure out what else I had to offer. I had to work really hard to be smarter than I ever thought I could be. And I had to work very hard. I say very hard, but for the first time in my life, I had to rely on my character, my integrity, my personality. And even though my daughters don't think I'm funny, everybody else in my life, even to this day, think I'm funny. Maybe my ex-husband and maybe the husband I'm divorcing right now doesn't think I'm funny, but whatever. And so I soon realized that I was funny. And a little nickname for me was, "You're such a Jodi. You're such a Jodi." And I'm like, what the heck is that? And I realized that I was feisty, and I realized that I was a lot of fun. And I realized how goddamn important it was to have girlfriends. And I thought at that time, if I'm ever going to have children, I am going to make sure that they make their girlfriends a priority because it is so important. Without our girlfriends, we're missing out on a lot of life. Even though I decided and thought about transferring and put in my applications to transfer every single year, I did not. And I ended up graduating from Simmons College with a BA. And I'm very proud of that to this day at 64 years old, to say that I graduated from a women's college, now a university. And I'm really, really happy because I learned so much about myself, because it's about community. And that was the first time, even though I was on a cheerleading squad for 5 years, it was the first time that I really felt sense of community. I had never felt that before. Even when I danced, we didn't dance competitively, and I stopped dancing when I was 13 or 14 years old. But as a cheerleading squad, there was that sense of community, but you had the distractions of boys around you, right? I was also in like a lot of different groups, so I did get that wonderful feeling, that sense of community, and that was something that really stuck with me. And I went off and got a job, stayed in the Boston area. For anyone who's familiar with Cambridge in Harvard Square, I worked for Crate and Barrel, making a whopping $10,000 a year there. And that was a great job. Working on Brattle Street, working at Crate and Barrel, it's not there anymore, learning more and more about people. And most of the people that worked there were women. So again, I found myself in that community with women. And at that time, I had really, really honed my skills as to being more aware of who I was, the things that I said. I was never an abrasive person, as I'm sure you can all tell. Uh, but I got through most of my life with my looks, right? I got certain dances while I was dancing. Again, I was very young, based on my skill. And as a cheerleading squad, we were together as a group of girls. And at my reunion, it was interesting to see a bunch of the girls. And, we always go back to the cheerleading times. And even at the reunion, people were like, well, those are the cheerleaders. It's so funny because it wasn't like a snobby group or anything, but that was my first sense of community. Then going to a women's college, rowing crew, even though I just did it for one season, that was a sense of community. Being at a women's college, sense of community. Then working at Crate and Barrel, mostly women, because retail usually, at least back then, mostly women. And again, sense of community. And I started dating my then, who he became my husband, the father of my children, and started dating him. He was living in Connecticut and he was coming up to Boston every single weekend. And our relationship moved pretty fast. By the time May came around, I decided to move back to Connecticut. My lease was up on my apartment. My roommate was moving out, and I said, "Yeah, sure. Moving back to Connecticut is not really what I want to do, but I'm going to do it." And I moved back in with my parents. He moved back in with his parents, and fast forward, I got an amazing job with a store like Macy's, moved up the ranks really fast. My background at that point, because of Crate and Barrel, was China, crystal, bridal registry things. And then I was in charge of the bridal registry at Crate and Barrel, a China crystal. I could tell you anything you need to know about flatware, stemware, and any types of plates, dishes, anything like that. I can tell you anything even to this day. Fast forward, we got married in 1985, and I continued my job in retail, moved up the ranks, became an assistant buyer, and then was promoted to buyer, won assistant buyer of the year, won 2 awards as buyer of the year. And I was asked to go on a trip to Seoul, Korea, but I was already like 7 months pregnant. And back then we didn't really do that. So missed out on that trip. But by June 13th, 1989, my oldest daughter was born 6 days late. Her due date was 6, 7, 8, 9. It would have been a really cool birthday, Alyssa. But she came 6 days late and was small, and it was wonderful. And I'm just so lucky that I had a healthy firstborn. Of course, I was in labor for like weeks because we never know what we're doing. So at that point, my husband at the time, he and I decided that when it was time to have children, and everything was very intentional with us, when we decided to have children, that I was going to stop working my full-time job and be a stay-at-home mom. And we both had stay-at-home moms, and that was a job that I was really looking forward to. After a year, I was like, oh my God, is this all there is to life? I'm being completely honest with you guys. I love being a mother, but I love being a mother right now. And I knew that I was doing the most important job in the world, but it's very hard when you're staying at home and your husband is going off to work to pursue his dreams. And imagine the caveman leaving the cave wife with their babies and, all that other good stuff, and to cook the food. And he goes off and he has his day. We don't really know what he's doing. He's coming home with animals so we can eat. But like, what else is he doing? Is he talking to other cave women? Is he like meeting at the local pond for some fishing expedition? Like, what exactly is he doing? I felt like there was more to life than just being a mom. And I think it's to our service as women that we do have more going on than just our husbands, just the house, just the children, just the chores, just that. Because I'm telling you right now, what happens is we lose ourselves. As I've described, I have been an active person my whole life. Some may say I was athletic. I've never really referred to myself as an athlete because I've never competed in an athletic way. So I feel that between dance, cheerleading, rowing crew, and yes, I took gymnastics somewhere in there, but then I fell off the balance beam and I said, I'm not going to do it again. I wish somebody forced me to, but it's fine. So here I am. It's a year later. I'm 29 and I am feeling really stuck at home. I go through my briefcase with all of my work and looking at I still have them, all of my awards, and I'm thinking, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. We didn't talk about balances. There was no social media. There was no one to reach out to. I didn't really have a community yet. We belonged to a synagogue, and there were a lot of other women my age having babies. I did get involved in a baby group, but again, I've always felt like the outlier, and it became even clearer to me when I was in that baby group that all the moms there seemed to be cool with the googly baby shit. And I was like, I'm kind of bored. I don't really want to talk to these women who have nothing going on other than their children, their husbands, their house. I need to have something more going on. So as a buyer, One of the opportunities that I had was not to go back there full time or even part time because we didn't have those kind of opportunities, but a lot of the buyers became perfume spritzers. So I was able to still get out and mingle with people, and I would do that on Thursday nights, Fridays, and Saturdays. And oh, by the way, my husband, who was a CPA, decided that he wanted to go back to school part time to become a lawyer. So we were juggling his schedule. I was able to get a babysitter. And so I would go out on Thursday nights, work at a store for 4 hours, and interact with human beings that were not necessarily talking to me about their children. And that was a nice respite for me. It was really wonderful. And I did that also on Fridays during the day. Again, so Thursday night he was in law school, Friday he was at work, and Saturdays. And finally, let me go back a minute. So I gained 45 pounds with Alyssa. And at the time, I weighed 110. So I weighed 155 pounds when I gave birth to her. Within 10 days, I lost 20 pounds. So that was all water weight. Her bilirubin count was high. So we stayed in the hospital for a couple of more days. My blood pressure was high. So she was born on a Tuesday. We were finally released on a Saturday. I did have a baby nurse for about a month, and that baby nurse was the person who was going to help me, learn about being a mommy. And it's just what my husband and I agreed. So she stayed at the house and she helped me with the baby, and I did not nurse. It hurt a lot. I'm sure there are some of you who are going, get over it, Jodi. It hurt a lot. I was told by my doctors, listen, Jodi, you don't need to do this if you don't want to do it. We don't live in a third world country. You do not need to do it. I did not feel like I was bonding with my baby. And the most important thing that I wanted to do at the time was I wanted to bond with Alyssa. And if I was going to be uptight and uncomfortable, and remember, neither one of my ex-mother-in-law and my mom did not nurse us. So we were like the first generation of doing all of these things. And my ex-husband at the time, he was like, Jodi, you don't need to do this. The doctor told me I didn't need to do this. I'm like, give me the Enfamil. I'm going home with the baby, the nurse, and the formula. And this is something I've never shared on here either. So bear with me. I just really want to give you some insight into parts of my life that I think are really important, since I'm going through a transitional time right now, getting divorced for the second time. That I remember when I was pregnant with Alyssa, that her dad and I went and looked. We were married. Her dad and I went and looked for cars because I needed a bigger car. We looked at several cars, and when I was pushed out of in the wheelchair, pushed out with Alyssa in my arms, outside waiting for me was a brand new car. It was a brand new Honda. It was like the top of the top for the Hondas. It was a white Honda. Again, I was 28 years old. My husband was a CPA. He was going to law school. We owned our own house. I mean, we were doing really well. And there was the white, beautiful Honda with all the bells and whistles, with pink balloons all over it. And that was really, really sweet. And I will never forget that. Anywho, I really needed the outlet. So being a perfume spritzer was great. Got pregnant 2 years later. That was the plan. 2.5 years later, got pregnant, had a miscarriage. Got pregnant again, had a miscarriage. At this point, we took a while to get pregnant again. We knew we wanted 2 children. And then finally, after we gave ourselves a break, I got pregnant again. And that was hard. I was only 7 weeks along with each one of the miscarriages, but it's really hard. The very first time you go through a miscarriage, you don't really know that you're miscarrying. And sometimes, at least this is what happened with me, they're like, well, we can't for sure say that you're miscarrying, so it's up to you. You could miscarry on your own, or we could do a DNC, which is basically an abortion. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to miscarry on my own. If I'm going to miscarry, I'm going to do this on my own. I want to believe that it's not going to happen. And then the second time it happened, this time I knew what was going on. And I'm like, okay, like that was really hard to go through emotionally the first time. And I'm like, okay, it was still very hard the second time. But at least I knew what was happening this time. And then finally, he and I had gone away on a vacation, and I remember taking a picture with Alyssa because it was around her birthday, like 2 weeks before her birthday, and taking a picture at her birthday when she turned 3. And I remember looking at that picture and thinking, like, not that there was this glow because we didn't use those words, but there was something, this incredible happiness. And I was pregnant. So 3 years, 9 months later, Alexis Lauren was born. And she was only a few days late. Pregnancy was great. In between the girls, I was doing my perfume spritzing, and I'll go back to the weight loss. So I gained 45 pounds with Alyssa, who only weighed 515. It was 19 inches long. And I said to myself, I'm going to lose this weight within 12 weeks. Now, I've been lifting weights since I was 20 years old. So that was always a part of my life, even though there weren't a lot of places to lift weights that were not like full on bodybuilding gyms that I didn't want to have a part of. I worked out at a place called Gloria Stevens, for those of you who remember what that was. It was for all women, and it was basically circuit training for women. So I was working out in between the two girls. I was perfume spritzing, I was working out, and I still had like 10 more pounds to lose. So I joined Weight Watchers. And there I was strolling in with Alyssa in the carriage, and she's like 3 months old. And they're like, what are you doing here? Like, I need to lose 10 pounds. They judged me. I said, I'm healthy. I have a healthy relationship with food. And again, a community of women. I only went to maybe 5 meetings until I lost the weight, but that was my first introduction at 28 to really start understanding food. Nobody talked about menopause. Nobody talked about weightlifting. Nobody talked about muscle mass and skeletal muscle. Nobody talked about any of those things. I was working out. I knew that whatever I was doing was good for me, but I didn't know how it was going to manifest itself in any way. I just knew that when I was working out, I felt really good about myself. And I felt that it was just going to help me in the long run. I saw my obese relatives on my mom's side. Everybody was obese. Everybody. I saw them dying of heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, having difficulty sitting down, getting up. And I remember, like, even as a young 10-year-old, looking at them and thinking, I don't want to be in that much pain. I know I told you I was going to try to tell this story in chronological order, but going back to college, I was a communications major and a government major and a business major. So basically, communications with business and government. They didn't have a big business school at all. You didn't go to Simmons to become a business manager. You went there for nursing, library science, and for physical therapy. There was this very pretty girl my age, beautiful, like beautiful. I'm not talking sexy beautiful. I'm just talking just athletic, beautiful, gorgeous skin. She was probably from the Midwest, and she was really smart. And I really just wanted to be just like her. And she was a PT major. And I remember saying to my dad, I think I want to become a physical therapy major. And he said, I think it's too late. It's a 5-year program, but find out what you need to find out. So I had to take a lot of science courses and math courses. And unfortunately, my parents didn't, it's not like they didn't support me, but my father had the best heart in the world, but he also had a scarcity mindset. My mom did not have a scarcity mindset, but she did not like live in the real world. I mean, like, she would be like, you can do anything. Yes, I could do anything. If I told her I wanted to be a pole vaulter, she would say, sure, you can do that, Jodi, but come on, let's be realistic. So I had the realistic, I had the scarcity, I had the empowerment, and then it was for me to figure it out. So my parents were going through some financial issues. I knew one more year of school was not going to be good. And, my sister was going to college, and then my other sister had to go to college. And so I gave up my dream of becoming a physical therapist because I thought it was going to be too hard, which is so not like who I am right now. But I was such a pleaser. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I was such a pleaser that all my parents needed to say, yes, Jodi, you can do this. And I would go for it. Or they'd say, Jodi, I don't really think that's a good idea. And I'd say, okay, but believe you me, I got tutors in math, I got tutors in science, and I allowed my fear and my scarcity mindset to stop me. I could have figured out a way to make enough money to get a loan to do the physical therapy degree. So then from there, given that it was a 5-year program, I said, okay, let's put this aside. How about a nutrition major? And again, lots of science and math classes. My worst grades on the SATs and in high school were in science. I know that I could have gotten better grades in high school if I believed in myself more and took it more seriously. Even though I did take my grades very seriously, it just didn't come naturally. I wish that I had pushed myself more to have gotten that degree in nutrition. But alas, I did not. I went into retail, as I mentioned, and I worked Crate and Barrel, ended up working for like a Macy's type of store, but on a smaller way. And I ended up doing great. And when I ended up leaving because I was having Alyssa, I left on the highest note that I possibly could have, and I was really, really, really proud of myself, and I was very successful at what I had done. So, I go to Weight Watchers, I lose the last 10 pounds. I'm in these baby groups, these, mom groups with all the kids, bored out of my friggin' mind. Bored to fucking death. But I went because we all needed to make friends. This was our first, there were like 8 or 9 of us, and one of the girls lived up the street, and she and I became very, very good friends, and her daughter and my daughter became best friends and are still best friends to this day, 35 years later. So that was my time, I could take Alyssa there when she wasn't at nursery school and so on. And in the meantime, what I did was I also started working out at a local gym. So no more Gloria Stevens. I started taking group classes after I had Alyssa. So I was lucky enough to have my mother-in-law babysit, and then I found a babysitter in the area that could watch Alyssa so I could run to my workout class because of course she did not do well in the daycare there. And it was dirty and yucky, and you know what I mean. So I would go there, I would work out, and then I would take a class which was high-low aerobics, AKA it was an 1-hour hit workout. It did not stop. It was a 1-hour friggin' hit workout. And then afterwards, I would go over to the gym and I would lift weights. After a few classes, maybe a month or 2 of classes, one of the instructors came over to me and said, I've seen you in the gym. I've seen you in class, obviously. You're really, really good at this. Have you ever thought about getting certified? And I said, "No, but I would love to." So she said, "This is the certification you should get. If you're interested, do it, and then we would love to hire you." And I thought, "Amazing. Now look what's happened to me." Now, I didn't know it was the universe showing me something. I didn't, we didn't talk like that. I just thought I was being fearlessly authentic. I was taking classes, I was being myself, and somebody came to me and said, "Hey, we think you're great, and we want you to teach class, get certified, and we could put you in a class." So I got AFA certified in group fitness. I got step aerobics. That's when step aerobics came around. I got certified in step aerobics. I got certified as a personal trainer. So now more and more people were approaching me after class and asking me to coach them because women, let's be honest, this was 1989 and you didn't see a lot of women in the gym. And that's really when I started my career as a coach, as a group fitness instructor. And if you talk to any personal trainer who's been around for a very long time, I could guarantee you that most of them started in group fitness classes because that's what we had in the late 80s and 90s. You did not see personal trainers. So that led me to having private clients, training them part-time, teaching my class 3 times a week, and meeting more and more people in the fitness industry and running workshops. And it was really just wonderful. By the way, I was also spritzing people 3 times a week, 12 hours a week in the department stores. And then when I had Lexi, we decided, okay, let's cut back on, I don't need you to do this. And I was never doing it for the money. And I don't mean to sound like an asshole to say that, but I wasn't doing it for the money. My husband did very well for himself. I did it for my own mental well-being. And I really want you ladies to listen to that. Like, whether you need to do it for the money to actually put food on the table and pay the bills and put gas in your car, you should still have an outlet besides your family, because it will give you that balance in life that so many of us strive for and forget. And then here it is 6, 7 years later after you've had children, and you're like, who am I? Who am I? And it was after a year that I had Alyssa when I went into my closet and opened up my briefcase, as I mentioned before, and looked through all of my reviews and thought, wow, I was really good at what I did. Like, what am I doing? Not that I regretted having Alyssa at all, but like, Jodi, you got to do something more with your life. Like, this can't be. You can't just say like goodbye to your husband every morning and just be home and go work out. And I know to a lot of you that sounds, wow, Jodi, that sounds like a great life. I'd like that life. Well, I guess it's the firstborn in me, the Capricorn in me, that just always wants to have a huge purpose in life. I knew my main purpose in life was to be a mom. I got that. I understood that. I loved being a mom. But I think it's also incredibly important to show your children and to show your significant other that there are more aspects to you other than being a mommy and being their wife. And if you're the person cleaning the house and doing all those other things, that you're more than a housekeeper, you're more than a cook, you're more than a mom, you're more than a wife. You are Jodi. You are who you are. So I continued to do that. After I had Lexi in 93, I said, okay, I gained only 35 pounds with her, lost the weight in 3 months, did not need to do Weight Watchers this time, and taught classes up until maybe 2 weeks before Lexi was born. I was teaching like a prenatal yoga class rather than high low or stuff or things like that, because you don't want to be teaching stuff when you're like 8 months pregnant. Then it was like, okay, now I'm done having children. And what's my next goal? So I decided to get into the best shape of my life, and I hired a coach. And he taught me everything I needed to know about nutrition, even though I had these nutrition certifications. I had my personal training certification, I had my group fitness certification. But here's the thing, people, you never stop learning. And this guy was a character. He was Mr. Connecticut. He was a bodybuilder in Mr. Connecticut. And he taught me all about macros and protein and how to build muscle. And my body transformed incredibly. And I still have the stats from when I went to see him. I was 32 years old. I think I weighed like 108 or 105. My body fat was low, everything was low, but I said to him, I want to get my body fat lower. So anyway, I hit my goal because that's the kind of person I am. I have to hit my goal. Like if I'm going to pay somebody to teach me something, I'm going to learn. So I learned even more with him. And he wasn't like the nicest person in the world. He wasn't my personal trainer. I went and I figured out how to work out by myself. And there was no YouTube. There was no Google search. Maybe there was like AOL, if this is 93. But yeah, like I wasn't taking my phone. We didn't have smartphones. We had our Blackberries. So if I even had that, maybe I had a flip phone. And you just asked people. You figured shit out. I would ask him some questions, but he made it very clear to me. Food is most important. This is how you lift weights. This is what you do. And I learned so much from this man. And that was 32 friggin' years ago. And I still remember. At 35, I wanted to compete in fitness shows. And my then husband said, not as long as you are my wife, you will not be competing in fitness shows. I would also like a boob job. And he said, as long as you are my wife, you will not be getting a boob job. So I thought, what am I going to do with that information? All right, I'm just going to keep on being Jodi. Going to be a great mom. We had an amazing social life. I went to the gym 5 days a week. I stopped teaching classes at that point. At that point, I was going to the gym and I had my own private clients. And I was taking them through nutrition and training, and it was amazing and wonderful. By the way, everybody criticized me, judged me for the way I was eating, for the way I was working out. We would go out with our group of friends. The guys and the girls would be like, oh my God, Jodi, you look so good. And mind you, I did not lose a lot of weight. Like I said, I wish I had the numbers in front of me right now. Maybe I weighed 108, maybe I weighed 106 and I got down to 102. Like I weigh 102 now. So like it's not like you saw me losing a lot of weight. It's just this is what happens, you guys. It just transforms. You start looking different. There's this beautiful glow about you. You have more muscularity. And the comment I was getting was, "Whoa," from my ex-husband, "Whoa, those biceps are getting a little big, aren't they? Oh, those thighs are getting a little bit big, aren't they?" And and then the men and the women, when we would be eating dinner together and going out for our Saturday night dinners with all these groups of people, the guys and the girls would be like, "So Jodi, what are you doing? God, you look so great. You look so great." And he would squeeze my legs under the table to shut the fuck up. And I thought, this doesn't feel right. And then as I was feeling better and better, and may I say the word sexy, which was never a word he used to describe me or a word we had in our vocabulary back then, because it was like taboo for some reason. He'd be like, "Oh, that skirt seems a little too short, Jodi. That the shirt, it's unbuttoned down a little bit too low." And I started thinking, fuck me, this is really fucking controlling. And I don't like this anymore. My point in telling you this in my whole story, which I didn't mean to get into so much, but I think it's really important to explain my journey a little bit. And I really should fast forward this a little bit. But if you're patient, you can listen to it. And if you think that this is interesting, I hope you continue to listen because I'm much better in the long form. I had always been a people pleaser. I was still a people pleaser. But what I was doing at the gym was working on me. I was working on my body. But what I didn't realize I was working on was my mind. So not only was my body getting stronger, my mind was, because my mind told me to go to the gym. My mind said, "You've got one more rep you can do, Jodi. You've got 5 more minutes on the treadmill that you can do, Jodi. You can lift this weight. Don't give up, Jodi. Don't give up. Don't give up." So I developed resilience. I became tenacious. I became more confident because I was pushing myself to be the best fucking version of myself without even realizing it. I wasn't looking for validation. I was not looking for anybody to tell me, "This is great that you're doing this, Jodi." I didn't give a crap anymore. And it was just me and this other girl in the gym that worked out. And I realized that that confidence started showing up when I was told to be quiet. I was told to shut up. I was told I wasn't smart enough. I was told I was getting bulky, which, by the way, ladies, you can't get bulky unless you're taking something to make yourself bulky. So I was not getting bulky. It was his way and my friend's way of telling me, Jodi doesn't seem to be a sheep anymore. She doesn't seem to be following the rules anymore. That's right, bitches. I started making my own rules without even realizing it. Again, please remember, no social media. I did this on my own. I was also involved in fundraising, and so I was always leading different groups. I was also the president of a nonprofit group, and that took on a lot of responsibility too. So I was always leading something. I was always a leader, whether I was leading my clients, I was leading my daughters. The only person I couldn't lead was my husband. So I started realizing I started fighting back, and that brought a lot of tension into the marriage because Jodi wasn't complying. I stopped being so compliant. Can you guys relate to that? I'm sure you can. I realized when my non-compliance became an issue that I needed to start thinking about what this life was about. I didn't say, "Oh, I'm not being compliant. I'm going to fight back." I just said, "I'm going to stay the course. I'm going to stay the course. I'm going to keep my blinders on. I'm going to stay focused on what is great for my children and what is great for me." My husband works all the time. He's doing what's great for him. We are just accessories to him right now. I'm not taking away the love. He's an incredible father. I want to make a point of saying that. But that's where we were in our 30s, right? He was building a huge business. I was the caretaker. I think he probably saw that I was growing and I was not as controllable as I used to be. And that's due to everything that I was building in the gym. And I'm not just talking about muscles, I'm talking about mindset. So a lot of other things happened. Like there was no cheating, nothing like that. But I realized that this relationship is not a place where I can grow anymore. I don't have an advocate. Yes, he's a great father and he tries to be a great husband, but he's not hearing me. He's not understanding me. He still wants to keep me small. He doesn't want to really see me grow. I don't think he really appreciated the work that I put into myself. Never said things like, you look great, or I'm proud of you. Or I remember on my 40th birthday, I asked him to throw me a surprise party. And that night I said to him, and I was surprised. And I said to him, why did you throw me that surprise party? And he said, Jodi, because at the end of the day, you're a really good person. At the time, that wasn't the answer I wanted. What I wanted was because I'm deeply in love with you, because I think, you rock my world. And instead, I got because you're a really good person. And I'm going to hold on to that really good person thing for the rest of my life. But at the time, I needed more. You know, I was perimenopausal. Doctors wanted to put me on Prozac. Nobody really knew what to do. They didn't understand it. My doctor would say, this is just something you need to go through. Let's put you on a low dose of estrogen, and that will regulate your periods. And it did. And then he still couldn't come to my side. Tried therapy, blah, 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 blah. And then finally I said to him, listen, if we can't come to an agreement here, like we need to separate. And he's like, well, he's a lawyer. Or I don't believe in separation. So we either get divorced or we stay married. I go, well, I guess we're getting divorced. So he had all the power. He had all the money. He had all the power. It's not like I had a trust fund someplace. No, he had all the power. And I was willing to risk it all to be happy, to show my daughters that this is not how a woman gets treated in a marriage, in a relationship. This is how she's not supposed to be spoken to. And this is what a fearless, strong, independent woman does. She does not stand for anything less than great. If she is not getting respect for what she's doing and getting the love and the attention that she deserves, I'm not saying to quit, but after trying for 5 years and communicating honestly with what I needed, the writing was on the wall. I've talked about it with the husband I'm married to now that I'm divorcing, that, I have a lot more insight now that you can't clap with two hands. And this man, the father of my children, was not coming to meet me in the middle. He was very, very ambitious. And I really loved that about him, but I needed something more. And what happened to me was I started shopping a lot. So some people have affairs, some people drink, some people do drugs. I shopped and bought I didn't shop at Target. I didn't shop at the dollar store. I shopped at a very, very high-end store in Greenwich and Westport. And I spent a fuck ton of money. Everything I owned was Dolce & Gabbana, Prada, Chloe, Louboutin, you name it. I had it all. And I would buy these clothes. And of course, when we would leave to go out, he'd say, is that new? And of course, I would lie. And I thought, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. But I couldn't stop myself. And the reason I couldn't stop myself is that's where I had control. I had control in two places in my life, in the gym. And he shamed me for going to the gym, as did my friends. They all made fun of me. They bullied me when we would go out to eat. Oh, what are you going to eat, Jodi? Oh, what's with this? I would order a salad and I'd say, can you put some chicken on it? People didn't know what a protein was. And they'd be like, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to be so picky? And when we would go out with big groups of people and they're like, oh, okay, here comes Jodi's order. Like, everybody take a break. And then he would roll his eyes. So I'm telling you all of these things because, look, this didn't happen because it was the 90s. This happened when you're not in a supportive relationship, when you're in a relationship where communication is not great and where it's, I think, hard to express your feelings and where both parties are not willing to work together to make this work. That's what I had. I had a very critical husband who did not support me going to the gym and really didn't support anything that I did except for the fundraising things. But even he found those things sometimes annoying and a pain in the ass. So basically, I was just a pain in the ass. But I needed to be home to take care of the girls all the time. And of course, I was. I used to say I was the best dressed nanny to pick up my daughters from school all the time because I was dressed in Dolce and Gabbana all the time. And I realized that I did have a problem. I didn't want to admit it, but I did have a problem spending. And because I would go shopping, I'd swipe the card. I even figured out how to get a store credit card so he would never see it. And I would come home with these clothes and I thought, where the fuck am I going? I'm living in, a lovely town in Connecticut, but like, where the fuck am I going in these clothes? So, I would return them. I'd bring them back, return them and then buy more, return them, buy them more. I did keep a lot of them because the bills were really high, but eventually, fast forward, and I know this is a very long podcast, but I really felt like I needed to get a lot off my chest and have you listen to what my real story is and how I got into helping other women and why I am so passionate about it. It's because of all of the life experiences that I've gone through that I can understand and relate to other women for why they're doing things. So whether it's shopping, drinking, doing drugs, again, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, but I did the shopping, or it's overeating and finding food as the source of empowerment because I grew up with obese relatives and I also grew up with a sister who battled her weight her entire life. And that was always a subject of concern in our home. And me and my little sister never had a weight problem, but I empathized with my sister. I felt for her. I didn't know how to help her. But I realized also when I was spending all that time shopping that that was my food issue. Do you know what I mean? And that was the thing that I sought out to feel empowered. Even though I had the gym and was bullied for it, I also needed another outlet, a place where, because he was very, and it was because he was very controlling about money. He doled out money when he felt it. So the gym was something I was totally in control of. It didn't cost any money. Yes, the gym membership, but you know what I mean. But the money, he was very controlling about. So I was being controlled in every way of my life, except for at the gym. And now I had an in-store credit card. Dangerous. So I couldn't compete. I couldn't get my boobs done. I wasn't allowed to go shopping unless he gave me a certain amount of money. And he didn't like me going to the gym, but I went anyway. So at 42, after giving him a lot of time to get help, go to a therapist, and he didn't. I said it was time. I'm getting too old. I'm 42. I have got to move on. So that was the time where I decided to take control of my life for the very first time and continue to be the outlier that I was because all of my friends could not believe that I was divorcing this man. How can you divorce him? You have this wonderful life. You have all these wonderful things. You have not a care in the world. You can do and go anywhere you want. You could buy anything you want. But could I? No, I couldn't do anything I wanted. I couldn't buy anything I wanted because he controlled me. But he didn't control my mind and he didn't control what I did to my body. So I decided to make the bold move of divorcing him and trust me, it was a quick divorce because it was very easy because he's a CPA, he's a lawyer, and he's a forensic accountant. So you just don't want to fuck with those people. That's another story for another time. But I will tell you that the agreement we had that he would take care of the girls for the rest of their lives. I'm like, look, I'm resilient. I'm a survivor. I will always figure it out. And that's when I amped up my training business and went full throttle into training and nutrition. And I also decided that I would start competing. I was working at 3 different gyms to make money. I wanted to show my daughters that your age doesn't define you, your marital status doesn't define you, And even though their father made so much more money than I did, because I stopped working basically full time for 17 years, that I was going to show my girls what a strong woman looks like, that she can stand up for herself, she can stand in her power, and she's not going to take any more bullshit from anyone. And it's time to stop being a goddamn people pleaser. And that's what I wanted them to see. Because let me tell you guys, the woman they would see right now, if I still stayed in that marriage, unless we got in-depth, incredible amount of help, you would have seen a sedated person just going along with things and never having a mind of my own. And that's just not the way I was raised. And that's just not who I was. And that is not who I wanted to see my daughters see me as. And I found a coach and I started competing at 47. At the time, I lost all my friends from my divorce. Like I said, I was training clients in 3 different gyms, so I had like a nice business going on. And I did it in the pockets of time when my girls were in school. I was home when they needed to get home. And it really worked out beautifully. I had some online clients, but for the most part, everybody was in person. And I also got involved in a mid-level marketing company and also made money doing that. So I found that, wow, like we didn't have that word back then, entrepreneur, but that I was very entrepreneurial without even knowing it. Found a coach in Boston, started using her, would drive up to Boston every single weekend from Connecticut to work with her. She was a hard ass. She was a few years younger than me. I was her oldest client. The 2 friends that I had left after the divorce, because everybody just left me and thought I was a jerk for divorcing him. And then, of course, he had a girlfriend right away and blah, blah, blah. I just stayed the course. My priorities were very, very clear: my daughters and my business, and of course, my health, because we can't do anything without our health. Those were my passions. Did I date? Yes, I dated. And as soon as anybody wanted to have anything more with, like, hey, can I stay over? No. Why not? Because this is my house with my daughters, and you're not allowed. We could go on dates on Wednesdays, every other weekend, and that's it. And if you want more, go find somebody else, because this is all I got for you, because my daughters are my priority and building a business is my priority. And if you don't like it, go find somebody else to fuck. So I met her when I was 46. I started competing at 47. At the time, all they had was 35 and over, and I was 47. And I told the organizer of that federation, hey, listen, you got a lot of 45 and over women back there. Like, it's really not like a fair playing ground to have us competing against 35-year-olds. Like, we're perimenopausal. Like, these women are 35. Like, 35 is nothing. They're babies. Even though that was just 12 years younger than me, I was like, come on, come on. You got a bunch, you got 10 women back there who are over 45. Like, come on. So I was able to get him to create a division, the master's division for women 45 and over. And 2 years later, I ended up winning 2 consecutive world shows when nobody believed in me. I think if you were to ask my coach right now, who I'm still in touch with, she would say, we weren't really sure. We weren't really sure if you would win those shows. And I remember coming out on stage, and I remember her telling me after I came off stage for the initial time in this world show. And she's like, Harrison, we think you might win. I'm like, of course I might win. I'm going to win. And that was my first win at 49. And 5 months later, I competed in another world fitness show and I won again. The interesting thing was, for that one, is that they announced the winners in reverse. So they actually had me placing 5th. And I remember my daughter texting me on my BlackBerry, that's not right, Mom, that this doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, let the chips fall where they may. She's really nice. She deserves to win. Like, it was my time 5 months ago. Like, let her win, not let her win, but like, it is what it is. Then they call us back out on stage again. They read it backwards and I won again. And that was huge. And, at the time, this was 2009, the magazine that we had was Oxygen Magazine, and everybody loved that magazine. And that was the fitness girl's Bible. And all I wanted was to either be featured in it, or what I really wanted was I want to be on the goddamn cover. It's like, come on, how many 49-year-old women do you know that are competing in fitness shows that have won 2 world consecutive shows? I'll tell you, nobody, but she didn't push for it. What she pushed for were the 20 somethings. And when I confronted her with it, she said, "Harrison, nobody wants to see an old lady on the cover of a magazine." Yeah, she said that to me. And I thought, yeah, they do, because I know women my age and they don't want to look like a 25-year-old. They can't relate to a 25-year-old. But she was like, "Harrison, nobody wants to see an old lady on the front of the cover of the magazine." Now, I still haven't been on the cover of a fitness magazine, not yet. And I refuse to pay to play. I will not pay to play. And I know a lot of the fitness magazines for women out there, you have to pay to play. But my dream has always been to be on the cover of a fitness magazine because I've been doing it since I was 20 years old. So from there, I continued to compete. I was super busy with my clients at this point, and I had one in college, one in high school, and, I was competing, like, every couple of months, and I just loved every minute of it. And then there were men in my life, and they were pains in the asses, and then at 50, I decided that it was time for me to take my clients from a big box gym and open up my own studio, a place where these women felt safe and secure. Because if you think about the big box gyms back in 2000s, they were your LA Fitness, your Planet Fitness. And that's where I trained women, was at Planet Fitness and at the Jewish Community Center, where there were just a bunch of old people. But Planet Fitness, I was the number one trainer there, and I had a fuck ton of clients. I was 50, they were all in their late 30s, so I was like an older sister to them. And I decided, you know what? The only way I'm going to be able to grow as a coach is to have people in the space that I want to create for them, not a place like this. To me, it had become yucky and I didn't want them there anymore. So I was called in by my boss. He called me into his office and he said, "Sit down. Hey, just want to let you know, we know what's going on." I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Why aren't any of your clients renewing?" I'm like, "I don't know." He goes, "I know why they're not renewing, because you're opening up your own studio and you're taking them all with you." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Who the hell do you think is going to continue to train with you?" And I said, "Just watch me. Who do you think at your age is going to want to train with you?" Do you believe it? Can you imagine anyone saying that right now? But that was 2010. And I ended up opening up an award-winning studio intended for women. I did train some men, but it was mostly for women. Business was amazing there. I ended up opening up another studio in another area, had 2 studios at one time. Eventually, the lease ended at the first studio and I moved to another studio. Got more new clients, ended up doing classes, offering spinning, yoga. It was amazing. That did so well. In the meantime, I was in a relationship. It was pretty toxic. Found out he was a cross-dresser. Obviously broke up after that. He was very demanding, insecure, very good looking, but insecure. Very, very toxic. I was menopausal. I wish I had more hormones. Let me tell you something. If I knew about hormone replacement therapy at the time, I would have been on it. But at the time, I dated him from 2008 to 2014. I was perimenopausal. I was competing. I was winning world shows. And I was in this relationship. My daughter was in college. One daughter was out of college. And my tank was empty. Don't ask me how I was still competing. Don't ask me how I was opening up these other studios. Don't ask me how I was doing any of this. I have no idea. Oof, if I was on hormone replacement therapy, then I think a lot of things would be different, specifically clarity of mindset. However, I was building a business and I was competing and I was had a full boat of clients. And so from there, I continued to compete. And then I started, more and more women were coming to me to compete. So not only was I training my clients to lose weight, lose body fat, gain muscle, whatever their transformation goals were. Now I was also training women to compete in fitness shows, and I was competing in fitness shows. I loved every single thing I was doing. The crossdresser and I, we went back and forth, back and forth. He said he would stop. He said he wasn't bisexual. He said he wasn't gay. All of these things. We ended up getting engaged, and then I ended up moving in with him, and then I left him 6 months later and just was like, listen, you got to be honest with yourself. You are either gay or bisexual, and that's fine with me, and I'll be your friend for the rest of my life, but I'm not having a romantic relationship with you. It's just not what I want. I'm looking for a straight man. That's what I wanted. And so we ended up breaking up, and then soon afterwards, I met my now husband and ended up opening up another studio, two studios going on at the same time. Finally, in 2017, I decided to just focus on one studio. So all the other studios, I was like, I don't have enough manpower to manage these. Let's just make this big, big, big and beautiful and just like friggin' crush it. Let's offer everything that we possibly can. And that's what we did. And it was an incredible, beautiful studio. I had the honor and pleasure of training with so many women. Oh my God. At 55, I got on stage for the very last time and competed in the 45 and over, because they didn't have, in that federation, they did not have over 60. Well, I wasn't 60. They didn't have 55 and over. And I ended up placing second, and I lost to a tall blonde who was 45. So for some reason, they feel like in the 45 and over, that women aren't short, tall, or medium size. So in all the other divisions, they have short, medium, and tall. But like, I guess if you're over 45, you should all be the same height, which is such a disservice. It's just bullshit. It really is fucking bullshit. So here I am standing next to this gorgeous tall blonde. And even at 5 feet tall with my 5 inch, 6 inch stripper heels on, I'm only 5'6" and she's probably 6 feet tall. So I felt like I won the short division. I was thrilled. It was a wonderful experience. And I just hung up those stripper heels for a while, and was just very proud of the years that I competed. It was incredible, and it taught me a lot about discipline, consistency, and being true to yourself. Because one of the things that I struggled with at the beginning with my coach was that I was looking at the other girls, and I was looking, at other girls to see what their bodies look like. And if I found a short, curvy girl, I'd be like, well, maybe I could walk like her on stage, because presence is everything. It's not a bodybuilding competition, it's bikini. So it's all about, basically a beauty contest for fit people, if I have to be honest with you. I'm sure it's changed a little bit, but basically that's what it was. You had to be fit, you had to be lean, you had to be feminine. And that's what I loved about it. So at the gym, I would work really hard, and that would be my masculine energy. And on stage, I could be this beautiful woman that I love being and show my feminine side. So when you get on stage to present yourself and you walk on stage and you're the only one walking on stage, and they watch you from the moment you walk on, you're there, you're right there in their eyes watching them. And that is your full feminine, beautiful energy showing them. All that hard work that you put in the gym shows off in this beautiful physique, this beautiful smile, beautiful hair. It's all about the overall presence. And I was always looking at the younger girls, because again, I was the oldest one, and I'd be like, I want to walk like her, I want to look like her, I want to da, 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 da. And she just looked at me and she's like, Harrison, just be you. And I'm like, eek, just walk. Let me see you walk. Like, I know that I was born with stilettos on and a bikini on. Like, that's how I came out of the womb. So I know how to walk in heels. And eventually my walk became me, and I understood what she meant. But at the time, when you don't know who you are because you've been so many things for so many people, you forget who you are. That it was then that I was able to actually step into my power and be who I was. But at first, it's friggin' scary. It's like anything, opening up a business, having children, leaving a marriage. All of those things are really, really scary. But when you are your fearlessly authentic person, you become vibrant and vibrating higher than you ever thought was possible. And that's what I learned about myself in competing. I learned so much about myself. Oh, and in the meantime, while I was competing, while I was raising my daughters, while I was training clients in 3 different gyms, I was also selling eyeglasses on the road. And that was my quote unquote full-time job. So I had about 5 different jobs at the time. And I became the number one salesperson. And eventually it didn't make sense to what I was doing. And most of the questions that I was getting asked were less about the glasses that I sold and more about how do you eat and how do you exercise. This was like in, I'm trying to think of the years, maybe, yeah, 2007, 2008, 2009. So I would like take days off from work to like fly to Philly to compete in a fitness show. And my boss would be like, so how did it go at this dispensary? And I'm like, oh, it's great. Yeah, it did. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. I was doing a lot. I'm very ambitious. I can do a lot. We can all do a lot, ladies. We can all do a lot. And my daughters saw me doing all this. They saw what I was doing. So I have this wonderful studio, and then the pandemic hits, and that fucking blew. And we were closed for 3 months. But before the pandemic hit in 2019, after dating my now husband for about 5 years, seeing the red flags, but ignoring them, thinking like, Jodi, your daughter's getting married, your ex-husband's married, getting married for the second time since you guys have been divorced. Like, it's time for you to settle down. He may not be the most exciting person in the world, but he's stable. And after the cross-dressing relationship, you need some stability in your life. So I got divorced in 2002 and then got remarried in 2019 in a beautiful little ceremony on the beach. After I got married, about a week later, my youngest daughter says to me, Mom, Sports Illustrated Swim is doing an open casting call. You should apply. And I'm like, Alexis, I'm done. Like, I don't need to do this anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm done with the bikinis. I'm done. I'm good. I'm married. I'm good. I have this beautiful studio. I'm good. And she's like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously, Mom? I don't know anybody better who can talk and walk in a bikini than you. Because, by the way, after all those conversations with my coach about how to walk and looking at all the other women and how they walk, I ended up having like the best walk on stage, to the point where like I would walk off stage and all the other girls would be like, holy shit, like how do you walk like that? So I was kind of known for my walk, and the clients that I got for that wanted to compete were like, teach me how to walk like you. And now I do walking videos, and it's really like the walking videos are from my walking days on stage. So I said, okay. So at the last minute, I find somebody who could make a video why I want to be in Sports Illustrated Swim. And the platform I stood on was that age shouldn't define us. And it's time that Sports Illustrated Swim puts in a normal woman, meaning let's put in somebody who's not an actress, not a model, not a celebrity, just a normal woman who is over 55, aka postmenopausal, who has made health and fitness a priority in her life. Well, didn't make it through the first round. So if you didn't make it through the first round, you have the opportunity to go down to South Beach and do an open casting call in person. So I didn't want to do that. My daughter said, put on your big girl pants and get the hell down there. Like, oh, your kids are always watching. So my oldest daughter lives in Miami, and she went to South Beach with me. Now she came to my competitions, but only a few, whereas Lexi, my youngest one, came to almost every single competition I ever had. So she knew what it was like to wait, and the lines, and the everything, that everything took a really long time. In the meantime, Alyssa, it's of course raining. I shouldn't say of course, but my luck, it's raining. And stood outside from like 6 o'clock in the morning until finally, I think I filled out the application around maybe 11, 12, and looking around. My daughter at the time was 30, and looking around and thinking, my God, my daughter looks older than all of these girls, because guess what? They're all in their 20s. And I thought, what have I gotten myself into? What am I doing? And I thought, once I commit, I'm in it. I'm in it to win it. So in the meantime, I was getting all of these calls from New York. And finally I said to Alyssa, I cannot look at my phone or anything like that. You need to, you got my phone, take. And so she's like, Mom, Good Morning America wants to do an exclusive with you. I go, what? Like, how do they even know I'm here? And then it was the New York Post, then it was Fox News, then it was Inside Edition. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is crazy. So I go through the process. You get to sit down with somebody. It's normally usually a model, like all the famous models that you know in Sports Illustrated Swim issue were there. And I had this lovely model that I sat down with, and you literally, they timed you. Tell us why you want to be in Sports Illustrated Swim. And I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And the whole time I told her, Marie, in 1 minute, why I need to be the representation for women over 55. I gave her all those reasons. The timer went off. She goes, I go, do you want me to stop? And she goes, no, I want to continue. I really want to hear your story. So I continued telling my story for like another, and she said, okay, thank you so much. And that was it. And then we were sent home. And in the meantime, the New York Post wanted to get pictures of me. Good Morning America wanted to get information from me. Fox News, Inside Edition, the local Miami news. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? Thank God my daughter is very savvy like that. And we had all of these interviews afterwards. And that night was the night we got the call whether or not we were in, or we were in and we made the top 60, or that we were out of the competition. And I was in. I got the call. And we were not allowed to tell anybody. We weren't allowed to share it with the press. We weren't allowed to tell anybody that we were in and that I had made the top 60. So I beat out 10,000 women, more than half my age, at the age of 58, to have the opportunity to vie for a spot to be in Sports Illustrated Swim issue. I couldn't have been happier. The next day, we go through the line again. Of course, it's not that long because it's only 60 of us. And my daughter is like, Mom, I'm like, what? I'm just about to fill out the application again because they make you fill out another application. And she's like, look who's on the cover of the New York Post. And it was me. That was crazy. And so I fill out the application. I'm nervous because I really, really want this. And I walk into the lobby of the W at South Beach, and there are the newspapers piled up, the New York Times, the New York Post, and there's Jodi Harrison Bauer on the cover of the New York Post. We go through a whole bunch of different interviews. There was another woman who was 4 years younger than me, but had already gone through the process, dyed her hair gray, looked the part of the old lady. And I guess at the end of the day, that's what they want. They want their viewers to look at the magazine and go, okay, this looks like a woman who's over 50. So she made it to the top 16. I did not. I was very disappointed. But weirdly enough, it's not weirdly enough. I guess it's weirdly enough. I got so much press. It was incredible, to the point where that woman reached out to me and said, where are you getting all this press? I'm like, I don't know. And at the time, my daughter was working for a PR firm. So she thought my daughter was getting me PR, but my daughter wasn't doing anything. My phone was blowing up because of all of the news. And I was like on Barstool Sport. I mean, this was 2019. So there weren't a lot of podcasts, but whatever podcasts there were, whatever outlets there were, I was on them. And I just was like, what is going on? It was very overwhelming, but it was very exciting. And again, I was disappointed that I wasn't in the top 60, but anyway, I told her, like, no, no. And the company that my daughter worked for, said she had never seen any type of organic growth like this ever in her life. And then I was asked to speak to all of these women's groups. And it was at that point that I realized that I needed to make a bigger impact in the lives of women on a global level. And I needed to stop keeping myself small and not sharing my story and my method of training and coaching with other women. And that's when I started this podcast, Fearlessly Authentic. And it first aired in May of 2020. So in March of 2020, March 16th, I believe it was, 2020, I had to close down my studio. So I had time to focus on the podcast. And then we opened up in July, and it was very hard to do business. We had to be 6 feet apart. So I couldn't have as many people in a group fitness class. There were a lot of women that never came back to the gym because they were scared, because either they lived with their parents or they had little children. It was very hard with my instructors, who were all young. They had little kids, they had parents, they had their husbands, they had other little children. and it became very, very hard to do business. And anybody who had a studio back then can understand it. Is it doable? For sure. But now I'm 59 years old and I've been doing this since I was 28. And I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done. And all I kept thinking was, I need to reach more women on a global level. I remember seeing the faces of the women when I was on Good Morning America. I remember talking to groups of women and seeing their faces and them wanting more and more and more. And I thought, there's got to be a way that I could reach them. So soon afterwards, I ended up getting rid of group classes and just doing one-on-one training, which is what I really love, where any woman working with me gets the most bang for her buck, where she gets the biggest impact, and where I can give her the most of me so she does get the biggest impact, because that has always been my goal. From the time I started working out, from the time I started training part-time to full-time, to having multiple studios, to going, Sports Illustrated, Good Morning America. By the way, the story did so well on the New York Post, that cover. They asked me to come back and do a Sunday spread. And then I had RDTL TV, it's German TV. It's the same producers that produce Traders, came to Connecticut to my home to film me. And that's, again, everything that was coming to me, I realized was to show me that I need to speak to women on a more global level. And it was then that I also realized that my husband, that I had just married, was not happy for my success. And he wasn't encouraging. He wanted to keep me small. And here I was again with somebody who was trying to keep me small. And I tried to ignore that. In the last year of the studio, I just trained my clients one-on-one, and that gave me so much pleasure because, again, even in 2021 and 2022, there were issues with COVID. People wouldn't want to come with masks. People were always getting tested. It just made doing business very, very trying. And like I said, I've been doing this since I was 28. I needed to stop. So I closed the studio in 2022, spent more time with my daughters, started reflecting about what I wanted out of life. I was 62 at the time, and just really spent a lot of time with myself, journaling, spending time with my daughters, walking my dog, and removing a lot of the chaos out of my life, and realizing little by little that my husband wasn't a support system to me at all. He just tried keeping me smaller and smaller, and he loved the idea that I wasn't working at all. And to be honest with you, I never thought that I would train another woman ever again in my life. And then I went to the island that you've heard me talk about. I started working with a business coach, and she encouraged me to go on this retreat that she was co-hosting. And I thought, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. I don't even really, I tried doing some online business. I had a small group coaching program, and that was really great. And that was my first time in 2024 was the first time I offered online coaching. And I offered it in small groups, and it was wonderful. And it gave me an idea of what it would be like, because all I knew was brick and mortar. All I knew was training people, touching them, being there, coaching them in person. How the heck am I ever going to transfer who I am from in person to who I am virtually? But if there's a will, there's a way. And I'm going to fast forward through this. Went on the retreat. It changed my life. I made amazing women. I journaled. I cried. We all had different rooms. We all had our own rooms. It was on this beautiful resort, beautiful island in BVI called Ariel. And I was at the Presence Summit, and it was 5 days, 2.5 days in silence. And they put me in the love room. Everybody had a name for their room, and mine was love. And I thought, oh, that's cute, love. Oh, it's just because they know that I'm having like some marital issues and love, 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 love. And I realized when I came out of silence that it wasn't about love in my marriage. It was about loving myself. Through all of this shit, the last couple of years, from really from the time I married him and started clocking those red flags, just clocking them and like compartmentalizing them, it all came to a head. And I realized I'm not being loved the way I want to be loved. I need a little bit more attention. And if you know me well, I don't need a lot of attention. I just need a little bit of attention. I don't have a problem getting attention. I don't have a problem being alone. I actually love being alone. But what I don't like is being with somebody and feeling lonely. And that's what I was feeling. Lonely, unappreciated, unsupported, and mentally checked out. So if you told me that I was going to get in my car and drive to where I wasn't even sure where I was going to drive to with my dog, I would have said, fuck no, you're not going to do that, Jody. But I did. His behavior became more and more disturbing. You know, when you notice something and then you can't stop but not notice it? Does that make sense? You notice it, you notice it, you notice it, you notice it, and you notice it. And then you're like, how did I never see this before? That's what happened. And that's when I knew I'm done. I'm done. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I have to take care of myself. And guess who's looking at me? My daughters. And guess what I miss doing? Coaching women. Okay, let's do it. So here I am. I am coaching women. I am working with them virtually. And I would love to work with you if you need somebody like me. You know me now. You know my story. You know my heart. I've been doing this for almost 36 years, and I know how to change the lives of women. Women who want to change their lives, women who want to put in the effort to change the way they feel in their body and they feel about themselves. Because what every woman wants to feel is confident, and what every woman wants to feel is sexy, whether or not she wants to tell you that. That's for me to figure out. And being sexy has a different definition to every woman. They might not even know it. And I'm not pushing sexy here. I'm pushing healthy. I'm pushing embracing yourself, educating yourself, empowering yourself so you could be the fearlessly authentic badass that you know you are. So if you're interested in working with me, DM me, email me, let me know. But I really wanted to take this time to explain to you who I am, what my journey's been like. I know it's long. You can listen to it a couple of times in different increments, but on social media, it's not always the greatest and easiest opportunity to show who I am in a snapshot. And if you're looking for somebody that you want to work with, I think it's really important that we always want to know their heart. And there are a lot of women and men out there, younger trainers, younger coaches who want to just get you fast results and not sustainable results. And my goal has always been the clients that I've had forever. I've had forever. And I'm enjoying coaching my clients more than I ever have. It's like when I started at 28. It is wonderful for them and it's wonderful for me to watch them grow and grow their new set of wings and fly. Nothing gives me more pleasure. So thank you for listening to this episode of Fearlessly Authentic. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.